So, okay, after you were discharged, you realized you were going to be working at the Pentagon, doing things like that. You always wanted to fly. We talked about some of the planes you were assigned to, but we have a number of these planes here, that are that you also flew. Now, I know you flew a lot of other ones, but the little twin-tail airplane at the top, little Beech 18, it was what the military,
C-45.
C-45, flying, I guess, personnel,
Yeah.
people around, so you flew that one. Then the one in the top there, that one is a
B-25.
B-25 Mitchell's, one that General Doolittle used when he dropped the bombs on Tokyo. And what did you do with that one? You flew it as a...
I was a general's pilot, one of the general's pilots.
So it had been converted to an executive airplane.
So I flew VIPs.
Ah, okay. What was that airplane like to fly? Was it...
Oh, nice. I call it old grandfather's airplane, or grandmother's airplane.
Yeah.
It was just a nice, comfortable... It required 2 pilots, whereas the B-26 had 1. And I don't know why they had 2 in that one, but because it flew nicely. It was a nice, docile airplane.
Well, if you're flying generals around, they want you in VIPs. You want 2 up there in the cockpit.
I guess so.
And then we also have the 4-engine B-17.
Oh yeah, that's right. B-17.
Now, when did you fly that one? Was that a
general's? It was a general's airplane.
So it wasn't executive.
Yeah, he had a B-25, a B-17, and a T-33.
Ah, okay. So, but you were his pilot for the executive version of the B-25 and the executive version of the B-17.
Yeah.
So what was it? Kind of curious, because the B-17, it was during combat. It was basically stripped down. I guess they went through the inside and fixed it up so that it could be fairly comfortable to. It was still not pressurized, I guess.
No.
You still had to fly, fairly low. What, 8, 10, 12,000 feet, something like that. So. And then this one on the one with the tall tail. That is a what is that one now?
PB-4Y2, Navy version of the B-24.
Because they built the B-24s here in Michigan at Willow Run. By the end of the war, they were running 1 B-24 an hour.
Yeah, unbelievable.
Now the difference.
You think that was just an small automobile assembly plant.
Yeah, and he just, by the end of the war, we were just chugging them out that fast. This one has one tall tail. The B-24 bomber was a twin tail like the B-25.
Yeah.
But the Navy wanted it with a tall single vertical stabilizer.
I don't know why.
I've read, and I don't know, that for the long-range patrol missions, they would get more stability with the one single tail. I don't know if that was true or not, but
I don't know. I don't know why. But I flew that before I went to PBMs to do bombing. And I got my master bombing for hitting 3 shacks in a row.
Ah, okay.
Yeah.
So that was but you've flown a lot of different airplanes. Now, one thing we'll notice is that as we look at in civilian life, computer science, you came to Michigan because there we go. 96, we'll come back to some of your civilian stuff in just a second. Age 96, you decided you wanted to fly helicopters?
Yeah.
Tell me about that.
Well, I went down to Texas and flew the Cub on my 78th, I think it was 78th anniversary of my first Cub flight. And on the way home from that, I'm talking with a guy that's driving me. I said, I don't know, I gotta think of something to do. And I said, I think I'll fly a helicopter. That's how it all came about. And so I called the helicopter company and said, would you train a 96-year-old? And I said, you got money? And so, yeah, that is it's a challenge for a straight wing pilot to fly a helicopter.
Now, what brand of helicopter was this one? This
Well,
was
that's not a picture of the Robinson R-22. Robinson built three, R-22, 44, 66. And the 66 was a four-place plush. I flew that one time. The 44 was in between. The 22 was primarily for training.
Okay. So you trained in this one, or did you do this two-seater?
22.
Yeah. Okay.
I got to fly the 44 one time to take a guy from Pontiac up to Harrison Island and drop him off at his front yard. That's neat about a helicopter, you know.
Yeah, you could. Now, tell me, you say it's different than the fixed wing. Did you find it enjoyable? Was it better? Or was it just different? You know,
Different, yeah, different. Things that you do automatically, and the FAA has a whole first circular out on changing straight wing pilots being trained in helicopters, because a lot of things you do in a helicopter are reverse of what you do in a straight wing airplane.
Give me for example. Yeah.
Some of the recoveries from stalls and stuff, where your automatic reaction is to push forward, where you don't do that with a helicopter, and just certain things like that. I don't know. Some things about the helicopter were easy. Like my instructor liked the way I made an approach. He said, you make every approach exactly the same, and it's just perfect. You know. But then the challenge is hovering. Hovering. Stay there. You know that I spent a lot of time learning that, and that's the toughest part of helicopter flying, as far as I'm concerned. But there's it's different in an emergency. Things that you have to do, just different.
So, do you still fly helicopters?
No,
when did you quit flying? How old were you when you stopped flying them?
I quit at 97.
Oh, so
What happened was the instructor went on a long wedding thing, and he was gone for a couple of weeks. And I got to thinking, why am I spending $300 an hour for something I'm not just enjoying? That's not right. So I called him and said, I'm through. I'm done.
Okay. So you flew a helicopter for a year when you're 96 and quit flying when you were 97.
Yeah.
Wow. Now, during this time that you were retired, you were here doing computer science data processing for AAA. Is that so? You worked for them for how many years?
13 years.
So you had your career in the Air Force, 30 years.
30 years.
And then you came up here and did another 13 with AAA doing.
I left the Air Force on Friday and started work on AAA on Monday.
Well, there's nothing like taking a break.
I didn't take. The break was driving from Washington up to here.
Okay. So how'd you pick? Is that whether you just applied for a job?
When I went to Langley.
That's in Virginia, yeah.
Yeah, Virginia. I made acquaintance with Scooter Lauer. I mentioned him, the first ditching. He was the pilot. Now he's the vice president of one of the vice presidents of Hughes. And he was a vendor that came to call on me about things I was doing. And another one was, I can't remember his name, but he worked for Mohawk Data Sciences, which built the first punch card to mag tape. In fact, I wrote a program for them to do paper tape to mag tape. And anyway, I was just unhappy. I was on the reviewing stand for the general for POWs that came back. I was on a POW committee, and I'd hear all these great things on the reviewing stand about everybody, the POWs coming through. And then the next day I'd read about how the press would be bad-mouthing generals and stuff. And I was unhappy. I just was unhappy. So I asked these guys, the two of them, I said, I really think I want to retire, but I don't, how do I go about doing it? They said, buy a Tuesday Wall Street Journal where the ads are, and that's where you start. So the next Tuesday, I went down, I bought a Wall Street Journal. There were 3 ads in there for computer science, vice presidents, so forth.
Mm-hmm.
One for a hospital, one for, it didn't identify what it was. It just said AAA did not identify what their job was. And another one. I answered all three, and I got answers from all three, and I don't know, it just hit right with me coming up here and talking to the guys at AAA.
Mm-hmm.
And so I talked to them one day, and I knew I was hired, and they hired me, and then I had to convince Joe.
Mm-hmm. To move to Michigan?
No, to retire.
Oh, that's right, because
She was a natural for leadership, and whatever position or whatever organization she was in, she always rose to the top. And she was very much involved in the Wives Club and church things, and wherever we were, she was involved in those things.
Yeah.
And now I'm going to cut her off of all that. And at a time when I have the opportunity to be promoted to the ultimate that you should
Mm-hmm.
want as a career, it was tough.
Yeah. Well, that is true, because people sometimes forget that when you spend your life in an organization, like your wife Jo, she's there doing things, it becomes.
It was our career, not
Yeah.
just mine. It was our career.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, and she's doing that. She knows, and even as you move from base to base, you're seeing people that you've known before.
Yeah.
And even when you move to another base, you'll see other people that you've known before, and so you have that big. It's more than just a social arrangement. It's more like a social political, group.
Yeah.
So it's got to be hard. Had to have been hard for her to move that and then move to another.
Yeah. She'd already gone through all of that kind of stuff. Like when I went to SAC, and I was at March. Our house that we bought land and plans for a house. Well, then we got there, and her father was very, very ill, and we were living with them, and so I wanted to get a house right away. It turned out, the good Lord again, Bob Hunter, who was the developer, I told him, I said, I really need a house badly, and he said, well, it just so happens that the house next to where you were building, the people just failed their mortgage, and it happened to be the plan that we originally wanted on the corner,
Mm-hmm.
and available immediately. So I went home that night and told Joe's father, but I knew he wasn't paying much attention. He died that night, but I wanted him, it was a big deal.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, now I go to Wichita for 3-4 months and leave Joe in a strange country. Santa Ana winds are blowing 80 miles an hour, and she doesn't know anybody around or anything, with 2 little kids, and it was tough on her, but she never complained at all.
So now your wife, we'll just talk a little. No, she passed away. What, about
6 months ago? 6 years ago.
6 years ago, yeah, because you've had that, relationship of moving around, and she's, doing a lot of the work in terms of. Well, you're moving and you're in a high demand job. She's, in a high demand, position, herself.
Yeah.
So I know you met her when you were both young, had families together. So, your life with her was one of mutual support, I guess. Is that how you would?
Yeah, we were married 69 years, so quite a long time. And and she was always, I was at Little Rock for advanced training, and it was, I don't know how many months, but it was 4 or 5 months, and I just missed them so much that I finally convinced her to move to Little Rock for by that time about 3 months, and the 2 kids were in school, and she did it, and because I found a house that was furnished and everything, and so she did it without any complaining, and that was just a couple of examples of what she She was very, very supportive, and she was smart. If I'd have listened to her all the time, I'd have done things like when I got my orders for Korea. We were in Atlanta, and so we're driving through Texas, and the orders came through because I had said, if I don't get a flying assignment, I want to resign. So the orders came through: Charles L. Cohn, repeat, Charles L. Cohn, no substitute authorized. Name the B-26 training, and it says, repeat it again, no substitute authorized. And so we're driving from Atlanta to LA for her to live with her parents. We're going through Texas, and my reporting date was Christmas Eve.
Mm.
And Joe says, we ought to drive up to Perrin and see if we could get that changed. And I said, no, because I'd add another day of travel. We already had 5 days of travel ahead of us. Dog that was fit had a fit. And so I didn't do it. But it turned out when I got there, Christmas Eve, flying from LA to Dallas and getting there, the guy says, what are you doing here? I said, my orders said to report no change authorized. And he said, well, we're closed until the 2nd of January. So I called Joe. I said, do we have enough money for me to get a plane ticket back? So I hightailed it down to Dallas, and there was one seat left on the airliner. And so I flew back, and her sister and her boyfriend, I guess at that time, picked me up at the airport at 1 o'clock in the morning or something like that.
Okay, so it's good.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah.
They were always very, very supportive of us.
Now, you also did a lot of, I guess, volunteer flying for people that were ill flying. What organization was that, and what did you do?
Angel Flight.
Angel Flight. Okay, that's it.
Yeah, actually, it started out with Air Lifeline. Air Lifeline kind of folded into Angel Flight. Yeah, I flew, I don't know, maybe 40 missions of those. And it got to a point where I had a Mooney, and then I had an Arrow that I owned, that I flew. And people put on so much weight that it became impossible to fly 2 or 3 people. Whereas at the beginning, it was okay. I could take a mother and a daughter and a son or what have you. But and since I couldn't take as many people, then I couldn't take the mission. So but then I sold my airplane, and I didn't want to rent an airplane for it.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, I gave up on that. But it was a good experience. I liked flying them, and the people. Like the first one I flew was a young girl, 12 years old, who was totally deformed. Her left eye was down in her chin, and she had no chin. And the poor girl, she was 12, so very self-conscious. She walked with her head down and all that, because it was just, the eye was one thing. Her whole face had to be reconstructed. And of course, I don't know how it ever came out. I never saw her again. But that was just one of them. And I flew a young lady who was like maybe 24 or so, to University of Minnesota for a double transplant, kidney and pancreas. She had diabetes, and she and her husband went there. I picked her up 3 weeks later, flew her back home, and her parents were so appreciative that her mother had a big pie for me. And and it was very successful. That it was one of the early double transplants like that. But I flew a pastor's wife from Lansing to someplace in Maryland. Forgot the name of the city now, but she had just gotten the word that she was untreatable cancer, and that she had a very short time left to live. And so our discussion was a little bit subdued on the way home. I flew a comatose woman from here. She was going to Boston. They were taking her for her final resting place. She was totally, comatose, totally out of it. So it was very difficult to move her from one airplane to another, just to get her in. She was she was a fairly heavy lady too, and it was a real struggle to get her into an airplane and get her out because she's no help whatsoever. But anyway, I flew quite a few blind people, kids who came to Beaumont. There was a doctor in Beaumont who spent his time as experimental treatments for kids, and he was known worldwide. So people came to him from all over for treatment or
okay.
yeah. And sometimes he couldn't do anything, but other times, he was. I flew a young guy, and his father, he owned a greenhouse, but he was going blind, and so he came up here to the doctor. I flew him, I don't know, 3 or 4 times. I don't know whether he ever got any help or not. I flew a kid from Iowa, and he was probably 11, 12 years old. He'd been blind at birth. And it was interesting, his mother took him around the airplane so he could feel the prop, the wings, the elevator, everything. And so he could get in his mind. Now, who knows what he saw?
Yeah, doing that, yeah.
When I took him to dinner, and we had a nice tablecloths and goblet and all. And so when he got there, then his mother took his hand and where the goblet was and all. And you'd never know that he was blind from that point on. He was really self-sufficient.
That's really, I know you said you mentioned, doing things with the hospital that was flying people, to different hospitals and for all kinds of procedures. So it had to be very rewarding, to do that.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and it cost nothing for the people. I flew a young man from Saginaw to Mayo Clinic, and he had paid for the first one. It cost him $1,200, and he had to have a treatment every month. I guess he had a pretty serious cancer, and so from that point on, I flew him, or somebody from Angel Flight flew him. It didn't cost him anything anymore. But that was quite a, he probably was going for a couple of years every month, and so it saves him a lot of money.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's a very rewarding thing to do. Now you no longer do the Angel Flights, I guess.
Once you hit 70, which is a long time ago for me, 30 years ago, you have to have another pilot, and not only just another pilot, but had to have the same qualifications and currency that you did. And they were pretty demanding, so it became impossible for me to get another pilot available. You got to have weather, plane, co-pilot, me, the patient.
Yeah.
You got so many variables there that it was just too difficult, and so I sold my airplane.
Okay.
But I actually flew quite a bit longer than 70 with just not an ordinary pilot. He was a student of mine 25 years ago, 30 years ago.
Okay.
And that's what I fly today.
Well, notice now you still fly on a regular basis when the weather is nice.
When the weather gets up to 50, I'll go fly again.
Okay. Now this is a single engine 2-seater, right?
Yeah. And there's not many of them around. There's only about 50 of them left in the world. The company, I went to the factory to pick up one airplane for a friend of mine, and down in Melbourne, Florida, but they went bust and sold their company to China, and the same old routine. Chinese screwed it up and tried to bring it back, and it's not.
Didn't work.
They're not building it today.
Okay. One thing I want to look at and talk about this, so we'll just look at some of we'll come back to this one.
Yeah.
Now, to celebrate your 100th birthday,
yeah,
we talked about this briefly at the beginning. This is a modified North American P-51 Mustang.
The guy who is flying it has over 10,000 hours in a P-51. He started a P-51 school back 50 years ago. And he flew from Florida. His home is in Colorado. Just took him up here to fly me on that. And he has 3 dual cockpit 51s.
Okay.
That he had those built when he started the school.
Okay. So this one's modified so that you're in the back seat. This is you.
Yeah.
In the back seat. I can almost see your smile on that, you know.
He kept telling me, he says, salute, put thumbs up.
But this had to be quite the experience, because this is the high performance aircraft, you know, in World War II, you know, propeller engine, and it's everything. You know, my understanding, everything it's pretty much stick and rudder. There's no high, you know, if you're doing, it's all muscle. You know?
Oh, to do a roll, you have to take both hands and move it over. Yeah.
So I'd imagine you were.
I did rolls, I did loops, I did wing-overs, and I hadn't done that in 60 years. And the last ones I did it in were the T-33 back when I was getting checked out in that B-66.
Okay.
And I tell you, that was the greatest thrill of my life, just about. It was just, I worried all night long, how are they going to get me in that airplane? Because, you know, it's sitting there, there's a lot of space, and for an old guy like me, trying to get my feet moving and stuff. And my nephew, who owns one of those also, among his 10 airplanes, he says, don't worry about it, I got it figured out. But I worried about it. Anyway, in the morning we went out, they have a forklift with a chair in it. They lifted me up where I was level with the cockpit, and I just stepped into the cockpit.
Oh, that was great. Yeah, because, well, you know, for those of you watching, I met Charlie working at the gym. He works out, you know, 3 times a week with a trainer, and it was but still getting into one of these planes were designed for guys in their 20s, you know?
Yeah, right.
And maybe late 20s, because getting in and getting out is no easy thing. But that had to be an experience, you know, flying that Mustang.
It was great. Once I got settled in the seat and getting the military straps on and everything, I felt like I was back flying a military airplane. And he was just 2 weeks ago inducted into the Living Legends of Flight. There's a very rare organization out in California, big black tie affair. Yeah, he obviously knows that airplane forward and backward.
Yeah, that is. Now, I understand that you're retired. You're the bomb wing, the Air Force bomb wing, of which you were assigned to. It has gone through several iterations. In Korea, you're the I forgot the name of the bomb wing, the number.
Third bomb wing.
Third bomb wing.
But 13th bomb squadron.
Yeah. Now you've been to a sort of a bomb wing reunion down in Missouri, where they fly the B-2 bombers. Is that?
Yeah, so I got to fly the B-2.
Well, tell me about that's down at the Air Force.
Whiteman Air Force.
Whiteman Air Force Base in Missouri, just outside of Kansas City, a little ways.
Yeah,
so.
And about an hour. Yeah.
And the B-2s are there, and the B-2s flew from Whiteman to Iran and back, you know, nonstop. So tell me about the B-2.
I was amazed that it flies just like any other airplane. No different whatsoever. So I didn't fly the airplane, I flew the simulator, which is a duplicate of it. And I thought, you know, it would be some different things, but just like any other airplane. Took off like it, and flew ILSs and did some things with it, and just normal airplane. I'll tell you, the guy who designed that, Northrop, fantastic.
Well, I remember when reading about it back in the 1940s, when they were looking for an intercontinental bomber. Boeing had designed the B-47. There are other designs. Northrop had designed a flying wing.
Yeah,
and
B-49.
It was too advanced, and so the Air Force didn't buy it. And then I do know that when they first designed what became the B-2, they brought Jack Northrop out
Yeah.
to show him before. This way he could see your vision from the 1940s is the new vision, for strategic airplanes today. You were right. But at the same time, to make it fly, we didn't have the technology
No,
that was
you
required back
you need
then.
computers because you've got several moving parts there. And the B-21 is a big B-2.
So,
The guy with the most B-2 time, he's the president of our association, and he's been involved in quite a bit of the design of the B-21. Of course, he can't talk about it, but
well, I understand when you were at the Air Force Base, Rock, they took your cell phones and everything away from you.
oh yeah, ear hearing aids too, and they went and had to have a serial number of every hearing aid. I didn't even know they had serial numbers, but I found out that they do. Yeah.
So you had there's all kind of security clearance just to get around the B-2, just to look at it and see it.
Yeah.
So that had to be quite an experience for you as well.
Yeah. Now, the first time we were there was about 7 or 8 years ago, I guess it was. And at that time, we couldn't even get near the airplane. What they allowed us to do was to look at the airplane in the hangar about 100 yards back.
Yeah.
You could look at it. Well,
Yeah.
this time we climbed into it. I was into the cockpit and climbed around it. The bomb bays are fantastically big.
Yeah. So
huge.
it's a two-man crew, if I remember
Yeah.
correctly. So, and some kind of a cot for somebody to sleep a little bit, on
Yeah, a piece of plywood up behind the two seats.
That'd be,
And actually, the guy in the right seat, where normally a co-pilot would be, he is like what we were triple threat. We had in B-47s to be an AC, we had to be a navigator and a bombardier and a pilot. Triple threat, they call us. And with the B-2, the guy has to do armament changing, in case they change targets or change the design of the targets, weapons, all navigation, communication. He does everything just about. It's really a intensive job. And they had a Friday night party for us, and so we got to talk with all the crews, and family came in, and they're a unique bunch.
And they're a special breed, and realize you're going to fly. The mission would go to fly halfway around the world and back. So.
It's interesting that so many of them are married to B-2 pilots. Yeah.
They are, so they're...
Yeah, where they were a crew together at one time or another, and they got married. I'd say there's probably maybe 4 or 5 families like that.
I did not realize that. It's really, well, if you're going to, because that career of flying, I don't know how you're going to transition to other airplanes after you've been flying these long-range B-2s. I mean, it's, it really does, sort of cap.
That's a long-term career.
Yeah.
They'll go to the B-21 and stick with what they got there.
Yeah.
The guy who's the president of our association that I said has the highest time, he's a United Airlines pilot now, co-pilot.
So, yeah, it is really, but I know one thing, looking back on your career, we can look at, how the military was viewed, in World War II and in Korea during the Cold War. Then, Vietnam, it was not a good time, because we'll attribute the way the campaign was waged, decisions that were made, the political environment back at the home, we'll look at, that
was terrible. We should never have been in that war. And I feel so bad about the young kids. So many of them were killed in those grass swamps, I hitched a ride from Columbus to Los Angeles. My wife and they'd driven out with the kids. I went out I hitched a ride on a flight. And that airplane was filled with these young kids, 18, 19, 20. First cav, they were on their way to Vietnam. And I wonder how many of them came back, because is terrible.
Yeah. It's really changed. It's interesting to look, we'll kind of wax eloquent here, but a friend of mine was in the Army, staff sergeant, as Air Force staff sergeant in North Dakota. He was in the boonies in Vietnam and served his tour and got out. They're talking about going back to Vietnam. When American soldiers go back to Vietnam, they're really well received.
Yeah.
Because Vietnam never liked the Chinese, and they realize we have an American Chamber of Commerce pretty active in Hanoi right now, dealing with
Is that right?
trades and so things. As you look at what happened, 1960 through 1973 or so, and look at the situation today where they become our friends, and that's one thing that's kind of unique about the United States and about our military is that when something's over for us, it's over. We don't carry these grudges forever.
Rebuilt Europe.
Yeah.
With the Marshall Plan.
Yeah. So that's really something that I think I'm looking at your life and what you have seen in the 100 years and looking at, the way we have viewed the world and the way the world has viewed us. It's come, everything ebbs and flow, it changes. And I know I've experienced that kind of changes as well, so, but sometimes I think, and today people have tunnel vision, they just look at this is the way it's always been, we have to go back and we have to understand history, we have to understand people, and we have to understand the climate.
A friend of mine that we were stationed in Columbus at the DOD plant, Defense Construction Supply Center. And he was a major in the Army, and I was a major in the Air Force. And we were both in Vietnam at the same time. He was a full colonel, and so was I. And he was out in the boonies, and I'm in Saigon. And when he'd come in, I'd say, I don't know how you can live out there in the tents and the kind of conditions that they were in.
Yeah, it's just, when I, before I retired from Southern Illinois, one of my students in my graduate program was Vietnamese, and she knew some of the senior international officials, in Vietnam. And, she was there, the relationships between us and Vietnam, very positive.
Yeah.
It's a different, and sometimes we don't have, we have too much of a tunnel vision. So, as we kind of think about life in general, and I've said earlier at the beginning of this thing that you really should be dead. Just cut to the chase, because you should have died flying the T-6 Texans. You should have died several times flying the PBM. And then the B-47, that thing, they were blowing up all over the place, and other things. So as you look at that, and you've said multiple times, well, the good Lord has protected me. How would you describe, we hadn't talked, your life of faith, how have you seen the Lord, keep his hand on you, in your life as you've moved around the world, had all these experiences, what would you tell, the younger generation, today about, faith and life and stuff?
Well, I started out with debilitating sinus, hay fever, which would have kept me out of all flying, but I kept on going regardless. Knowing that they were going to tell me I couldn't do it, but I just kept on going because I believed that I would. I had faith in that. And, sometimes you don't realize exactly how much of an influence the Lord has, but it's what's kept me alive. I think about one of the accidents we didn't talk about is when the engine exploded on takeoff at March in the B-47, number 6 engine, just as I broke ground. And I was under the hood getting a proficiency check. And I held it and flew it. And they took 31 instructors out of Wichita. Told them when they were going to cut the engine, and exactly the same thing. None of them could hold it, not a one. And it was it was pretty unusual that I was able to. I couldn't. The airplane was shaking, so I couldn't read the instruments. And but eventually it calmed down a little bit till I could see that one power instrument was different than the others, and so I said that must be the problem. I cut the engine on that one, but I couldn't read what the readings were. I could just tell that it was different than the others. Yeah. I don't know.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
I've had great faith all the way through, right from when I was a kid, working and believing that I was going to be a Navy pilot. when nobody else thought I could. Yeah.
Well, this has been, I can see clearly. I've been talking with Charlie Cohn, U.S. Air Force Colonel, retired, also retired from AAA as a data processing whiz. And it's been a pleasure knowing him we've known each other, what, about 2-3 years now, I guess it is? About
a couple of years.
Something like that, and it's been an encouragement. And we want to share his life so that people can watch it and benefit from the lessons that Charlie has. And so we thank you for tuning in and ask you to sign on. You can subscribe and hear new episodes on other topics in the coming weeks. So again, thank you much. And Charlie, again, thank you for submitting. We've been here for quite a while, and I do appreciate this. So thank you very much.
I appreciate the opportunity. I talk too much.
No, you don't. Any last thoughts you would have for anybody before they leave?
No, just persistence and belief.
Okay. All right. Well, Charlie, again, it's been a great pleasure. So thank you much.
Right.
Okay.
You're welcome.